Hey, hey, everybody, let's have some fun. You only live but once, but when you're dead, you're done. So let the good times roll. Let the good times roll.
Hey everyone, what is up? My name is Martin and welcome to AAA Digest. Over the past week, we on the channel were lucky enough to play a hefty chunk of Mafia, the Definitive Edition, 5 chapters which I played twice for a total of 9 hours overall. We thank 2K and Hangar 13. As an OG Mafia fan, this was an emotional experience getting to play this game early, and despite getting that opportunity, which I won't forget anytime soon, I will keep this completely honest. This will be split into different sections, so if you're looking for something specific about the game, like the gunplay, difficulty, thoughts on the story or soundtrack, whatever it might be, you can pick and choose what you need. From the video, I'll have everything timestamped to make things easier for you guys on YouTube, so this will be a long video, so buckle in. I'll start off by answering the number one question: is it true to the original? And I would say yes, it is very true to the original on most things. The overall story beats are all in there. The biggest difference comes in the form of major changes to dialogue, and some things have been rearranged. Yet overall they've added more layers to the story and added extra atmosphere to the bigger moments in the game. And one notable addition: almost every mission now has an extended sequence that just helps flesh out that ongoing storyline. And if you're someone who loved the original for its narrative, you're getting more story in this game. An example I can use without spoiling too much: at the end of the Lost Heaven race, which is still quite difficult, I may add, the game provides a moment during the aftermath of the race where you, as Tommy, can walk around and talk to characters, get each person's reactions to your victory. It's pretty cool. Number 2, so the remake does stick to the original structure, although some missions take you on a detour to a new area, into a new building, or give you extra scenes with characters to flesh out that storyline. The general structure goes the same. You get assigned a job by the Don or Frank. From there, you often visit Ralph, the family's mechanic, who gives you a car for the journey, and Vinny provides you with weapons that are suited to the mission you have been tasked with. Vincenzo is now a full-on gym bro. He gets super hyped over manly shit. He is by far the most different character that I've come across from the original. He is hilarious, I'm just going to say. And after getting equipped by Ralph and Vinny, you can then free roam from there if you wish, or you can go straight towards the mission, whatever your choice is. Number 3, missions yet again have the same amount of variety, from chases, protection sequences, shootouts. Others lean into melee or stealth, a big race. There's a lot of variety to keep things interesting for the OGs. On some missions, you can find clues that offer extra context. They provide small stories to the location in general. An example from a trip to the country where you need to find Sam on the farm. There are clues scattered around that point you towards Sam's location and give Tommy extra context for what's happened in that area in the past. So they offer more reasons to explore in the remake, which I personally loved. And number 4, now if you're someone who isn't a fan of Mafia's long journeys between objectives, they have added a skip option for non-priority trips. So any trip that doesn't require you to reach a location at a specific time, you can skip, although you may miss out on dialogue in between. I wouldn't recommend it on your first playthrough, but you do you crazy motherfucker. Number 5, new action sections. Now the remake introduces a few new elements to missions that are usually unique to that mission, so it's kind of a one-off experience. Although I will say, as a critique, some of these are overly action heavy and dramatic and arcadey. I found them fine, but I know some OGs will be triggered by them. You guys are crazy sometimes. An example occurs during the opening mission to the game, in which Tommy has to help Sam and Paulie escape Morello's men. They've added way more chasing cars to that section. Tommy can also use environmental traps. These areas pop up on the minimap, you drive through, the chasing car behind you is scripted to crash, and some of these can also be used to avoid police as well. It reminds me of Mafia 3's first story DLC, Faster Baby, so yeah, a little arcadey. And we now have a designated charge button while driving. It's used to break through roadblocks or run cars off the road. Number 8, now moving from a mixed thing to something more positive, they've done a great job of creating deeper felt connections between key characters by giving them way more dialogue. Tommy and Sarah, in particular, are bloody adorable together in the remake. Sarah is pretty much Tommy's support system throughout, and you'll see a different side to Tommy when they're both together. With Tommy in general, you get a stronger sense of his reasons for entering this life as a mobster and why he stays in it for years. He also has a more natural transition from being quite horrified about his new career, rightfully so, to eventually becoming an established soldier in the family. The writing team have made that a stronger arc this time around. Number 9, Paulie, Sam and Tommy's friendship. Now this has been incredible so far. Exactly what I wanted from this story. Paulie, Sam and Tommy's friendships grow with every car ride they have together. The trio are talking throughout each journey, they share stories, and some of my favorite moments have come from these car rides. The three are just amazing together and have some great banter. And honestly, I feel like I've learned more about these three characters' lives in the first 5 chapters I played of the remake than I did in the entirety of playing the original a couple of times. That's not a dig at the original, it's just a compliment towards what the remake is doing. And similar to Joe and Mafia 2, they also react to Tommy if he crashes his car. They'll point him towards things during missions and politely roast him for taking too long. Number 10, Sam in particular is a very strong point of this game so far. He has a larger role throughout, more cutscenes. They establish quite early that he is a leader in this group. He's extremely witty, charismatic, and clearly a ladies' man as well. That you will see, so I love Sam in this game so far. Paulie is and always will be an amazing character. He brings a needed comedic side to the game, yet has many emotional layers. The moments in which he shows that serious side is some of my favorite parts of Mafia 1, and I will say his voice takes some time to get used to as a fan of the original. I like Jeremy Luke's performance. It was a hurdle for the first couple of missions because his voice is so different from the original until he eventually grew on me. So I would say that he does grow on you eventually. Now I'll touch on briefly the Don. It's difficult to replace George DeCenso's booming voice from the original. I personally love the new Don as well. He has a lot of extra dialogue and you learn more about him as a character. It's a great performance. The scene in which they introduce him and introduce Tommy into the family gave me serious goosebumps. Number 13. Now I won't discuss every character, but while hanging out at the bar, you can find missable moments with characters. So if you walk up to a certain member of the family, they will sometimes acknowledge Tommy. I had a cool moment in which I picked up a letter addressed to the Don, and a character who was standing right there kind of called me out for snooping. Sarah interacts with you at the bar before you even have a scene with her, as an example, and she flirts with Tommy, and the game provides little moments like that if you're willing to walk around, explore mission locations. You'll hear characters discussing prior events in Lost Heaven, and that's all I'll say. It's best that you experience it for yourself. And Salieri's bar itself has more rooms to explore. It's very pretty without spoiling anything. Make sure to check those rooms every chapter. Some unlock and lock based on your progression, and you can find some cool information in those rooms. Number 15, we have 2 radio channels to choose from, WBDS and WLH, that run local and world news, true to the times advertisements, which can be hilarious at times, weather updates, and they play licensed music too. Radios also experience interference going through tunnels, similar to Mafia 3, which is a little detail I actually enjoyed from that game. Number 16, overall the soundtracks and musical scores are great. They are perfectly timed with certain gameplay sequences that are unique to that piece of gameplay. A memorable example for me is when Tommy has to outrun some thugs and they play this track. There's a lot of music that's designed specific for moments in the game, such as that, and Lost Heaven's race as well. It just adds to the experience. Number 17, it's a modernized third-person shooter with a simple-to-use cover system. It should be a good thing, but I guess some people aren't a fan. If you love the original 2002 version for its gunplay and didn't like what you've seen from the gameplay back in July, I'm going to be blunt here, you probably won't like this game for its shooting mechanics. Tommy is easier to control, and shooting is rather simple in this game, yet it doesn't make it completely easy on the classic settings. It's still challenging, I'll talk about that a little more, but the devs add other things to the game to make it more difficult. If you enjoyed Mafia 3's combat, they've built upon that, tweaked a few things. Most video game series expand upon prior games' fundamentals and mechanics, and that's exactly what they've done with the gunplay and driving for the remake. They're better versions of Mafia 3, that's it put bluntly, and I liked it. Personally, for me, it's fun and fluid, yet notably feels different despite having the same mission structure, so do keep that in mind. Number 18, how does Tommy feel? So walking around as Tommy, he feels like his own character. When you play the game for yourself and are controlling the character, you're not thinking about anyone else. This is Tommy. Although I will say the story tries to capture his transition from being inexperienced to being an established soldier in the family. Yet in combat, he feels like a trained soldier from the very beginning. They try to start you off with weaker weapons to have some sense of progression like the original, but in reality, he is lethal from the get-go with any weapon, just like the original. He's like Lincoln in some ways, how he aims, gets in cover, his stealth takedowns, etc. It doesn't make it bad. I like that he's easy to control for a 2020 game. If you want that overly hard to control experience and you love that, you can always play the 2002 version. Number 19, throwing explosives. So serious nitpick inbound. Prepare yourselves. I'm sorry. How Tommy throws grenades and Molotovs. It's the Mafia 3 mechanic of throwing it over your shoulder or tossing it casually. I'd have liked if they forced you to put away your weapon, equip the throwable, and use it that way. So you can use explosives rather mindlessly in this game, which I don't like personally. It's just one of those few things that's a victim of modern gaming, and I guess you just gotta accept it and move on with your life. Number 20. So they do attempt to bring in some elements of the 2002 version in terms of difficulty and combat with no health regen. The only way to regain health is to grab it from medical cabinets on walls, which adds a degree of difficulty. It forces you to think about what you're doing in combat a little more when you take significant damage. I will say they probably have too many health cabinets currently. During missions, they are pretty generous with them, but they only provide Tommy with a small portion of health on classic settings. Number 21, we then have these ammunition and equipment crates placed around certain levels that give out ammo for your primary and secondary weapon. In typical video game fashion, they're often strategically placed before a big shootout occurs. Number 22, melee and takedowns. Now this is one of the larger improvements. You can do animated takedowns with Tommy's fists, melee weapons such as baseball bats, crowbars, knives, brass knuckles, etc., which are really cool, and there's a decent variety of takedowns to keep things interesting. In terms of controls, the melee system is pretty simple. You have a designated dodge button, light attacks, and then you hold for a strong attack. When an enemy has low health, you can initiate a takedown, and Tommy in stealth has access to a few takedowns as well. They differ based on what weapon you're holding too. Number 23, AI in combat. Now the enemy AI is okay. They keep you pinned in cover. You gotta wait for enemies to reload before making your move. Sometimes they will punish you for being careless in combat, and because the level design for missions is pretty compact, the enemies do a better job of flanking and are very aggressive on classic settings. Although like most games, the AI can be exploited and look quite silly at times, walking into areas that you clearly have covered. They'll blindly walk beside explosive barrels that you can shoot, and in stealth they don't look good, but you know, only a few missions revolve around stealth regardless. The companion AI, I will say, are pretty good. On multiple occasions, Paulie just straight up landed a headshot on a dude before I could even do anything. So in combat they're good, and I didn't personally experience any issues of them getting stuck on environments or anything like that, so we're all in the clear there, I think. Number 24. Now the game does give out audio cues by occasionally having enemies shout before they act on something, like hit them with fire so you know a Molotov is inbound, so you just move from your current position and they miss completely, or they scream to the world that they're flanking. That stuff is in there, sadly, so just be aware. Number 25, the classic settings. Now we have 4 difficulties: easy, normal, hard, and classic settings. Easy, normal, and hard have more UI elements, and you take more or less damage based on the difficulty. I'll speak on classic settings because that takes up the majority of my playtime. Now for the most part, it's pretty doable. Enemies are not more intelligent if you up the difficulty. They simply do extra damage and take more damage, so you need to be careful. Yet some gameplay sequences are no joke. You take a lot of damage in comparison to normal or hard. I did die while in cover once, so that's potentially a thing, unless I was just unlucky. There's an action heavy sequence during a trip to the country where an armored vehicle blasts a machine gun at you, and that thing does an insane amount of damage to Tommy and the truck you need to protect. It's quite tough. When I finished that on the classic settings, I did leave feeling like it was a good challenge. So it's difficult, and I'm sure later chapters when everyone has a damn Tommy gun will prove tough enough. Also, if you reload a gun with 3 bullets left in the mag, you will lose those 3 bullets. It makes you think about when you need to reload, which is a good thing. Ammo crates and healing cabinets give you limited benefits. UI guides are turned off apart from objective icons, which is ideal, so enemies don't show up on your minimap, visual warnings are turned off, all that type of stuff. And the game, like the original, has time sequences. One example for new players: you need to drive a car from one location to another within a specific amount of time. On the classic settings, you have 2 minutes to make that journey. It requires a perfect run to complete, while on hard, they give you an extra 30 seconds to work with. So if you make a mistake, it's still doable. So the difficulty impacts more than just combat in this game. So the optimal way to play this game for someone who is in need of a challenge is to put classic settings on, take all aim assist off or place it on low. You'll find that the game is a good challenge for a modern shooter. There's also an achievement or trophy associated with finishing the game on classic mode, because I switched to hard at one point and it just told me, yeah, you're gonna miss out on an achievement if you do this. Number 26, driving mode. So you have multiple driving options: simulation driving, which is more realistic, cars take extra damage, and steering is more difficult. This driving mode is mandatory on the classic settings, by the way, and if doing simulation mode isn't enough, in the options the game has a manual transmission mode, so if you're feeling up to it, you got that. Then we have arcade driving, which is an easy mode for the driving. And the driving in the game is pretty good. It's similar to Mafia 3, except vehicles are noticeably slower, unless you use cars from the definitive edition from Mafia 3 and 2. Those are ridiculous. So the city is pretty, in particular during nighttime. Locations like Chinatown, Little Italy, and Central Island are lit up and look amazing to me. Yet oddly, during sunny days, the game looks a little strange graphically at times. Mafia 3 had a kind of similar issue. You can go around and free roam the city between missions if you wish. Check out the different neighborhoods, which are all open from the beginning, although some key locations are closed off. And at points of interest in the city, like the landmarks, you can pick up collectibles, magazines, comic book covers. The cigarette cards in particular are worth finding, as they give you character backstories from personalities throughout the series, and you can also find notes, letters, and whatnot that flesh out the world. Number 28, traffic density. So streets are busier during the day than they are at night. Same goes for some other locations. Central Island at night has very active streets, while Beach Hill, as an example, is very quiet and doesn't have busy roads as it's a residential area. So how's the open world? So I'll say this to make it as clear as I possibly can. There aren't any activities outside of the main story. Many games are side missions with NPCs outside of Lucas Berton's vehicle missions. In terms of open buildings, I found a number of small shacks and warehouses that were open, yet they didn't have much in them. Visiting the landmarks, as I said earlier, will reward you with collectibles and sometimes a pretty view, but for the most part the city is a backdrop for the story and missions. So for anyone looking for an out-and-out open world game with endless activities, customization, then you won't find it here. I do get it, having stores or restaurants in the city like Mafia 2 would be nice. It would flesh things out that much more, but it's not the case for Mafia 1. Number 30, money. Now I wanted to touch on this a little. People often ask, what can you spend money on in Mafia? Can you buy clothes, guns, haircuts, etc.? In this game, Tommy doesn't make money that the player can use in the story mode. It's just assumed he has cash when he's in the family, so you won't see your cash total grow after missions or anything. Free ride mode is in the game, so it should allow for that, yet we didn't have access to that in the preview, sadly. Number 31, clothing customization, question mark. So clothes are all predetermined from what I could see. Tommy's clothes do change for specific chapters at a decent rate, yet in terms of going to a wardrobe to change his outfits, I sadly didn't find anything like that. Now I will say, different parts of Salieri's yard open up as you progress in the story. As an example, the garage doesn't become available to Tommy until the beginning of Fair Play. Halfway through the game, you can actually enter Vincenzo's armory and kind of take some weapons that you want. So I do assume we'll be able to change clothes in later chapters, as the game does have a pre-order outfit, and it wouldn't really make sense if Tommy couldn't use that until like the end of the game. So when we get more info on that, it'll be in a details video. I probably just missed it. No, my dumbass. Number 32, the vehicle. So all the vehicles look great. Some are extremely slow and struggle to get up hills like the original, so they haven't changed too much in that regard. Your current car shows up on the minimap. If you get out of it, you can turn that off if it's not your thing as well in the settings. In terms of breaking into cars that you don't own on the street, you have the option to smash the window or pick the lock. Lockpicking is exactly like the original. You hold the button, Tommy automatically does it himself after a few seconds. If you steal a different type of car that you currently don't own, it'll show up in your garage, which is located in Salieri's yard, and you find stats for each vehicle here too, and any vehicle you get with your pre-order or for owning prior games in the trilogy will show up in here. So in the garage you can also do small forms of customization to your cars, which is pretty nice. You can change the interior and exterior colors and choose which variant of that vehicle you want. It's probably as basic as it gets in terms of car customization, but at least it's something. Now, a point that most people will be interested in. So most things from the original are in this game. You can refuel Tommy's cars at fuel stations. You can be pulled over by the police for speeding, being reckless, running red lights. They can fine you and arrest you, which causes a game over. The only thing I can point towards things we couldn't do that were available in the original is Tommy can't seem to enter trams unless I was just really feckin' unlucky, because of the 3 I tried were just like, nah, leave dude. Cars don't indicate like they do in the original, and dogs don't seem to be in the game. I found a dead one, but I don't think that counts. You can hear them barking throughout the city. That's cool, right? Number 34, the police system. So the police has a 5-star system. Basically, the bigger the crime you cause, the more stars you will receive, and the more significant the police response will be. They're notably more active in the city in comparison to the countryside. The difficulty determines how many patrols there are, and the game has a witness feature. If NPCs see you commit an offense, they'll call the police, although they don't need to make it to a phone booth. Oddly, they somehow call the police who spawn in nearby to deal with you, and oddly, Tommy can hear the police communicating, like we lost the driver in Chinatown, or suspect is now entering Central Island. They don't really explain how that works, but video games, I guess. Number 35, no eating or drinking. So to answer another commonly asked question, you can't eat in the game. There are hot dog stands in the city like Mafia 2. I did approach to see if it was an option to buy and eat one. You cannot. I raged. No, I didn't. I was fine. Also, Tommy can't swim for those asking. I tested that immediately like the freak I am, and it just spawns you nearby. Number 36, now the big one. Run into any bugs. Should just leave you guys in silence now, just for the rest of the video. That would be suspicious. So the game seems pretty much finished on PC, at least in terms of the early chapters. That's all I can speak for is the first few chapters and one chapter that takes place halfway through. The later chapter, I think, needs more polish than the other ones. They have a month to iron out a few minor issues, some off particles or leaves floating unnaturally. Sometimes animated takedowns can glitch out if you activate the takedown near a surface. I didn't run into anything major during my 10 hours apart from a weird audio glitch on my second playthrough where the game kept playing Tommy's out of breath audio over a cutscene and sections of gameplay, although I quit out of the game and it thankfully fixed itself when I rebooted. So for a game that's a month away, the first quarter of the game is looking fine, and who knows how the Xbox One or PS4 versions will hold up or how the later chapters look. That's something we'll have to look at closer to launch, and we'll try and keep you guys informed. So do keep that in mind. I played on a good PC on high settings. From what I experienced, issues seem to be quite minor and they have a month to polish things up. Now, thoughts going into the remake. Dare I say this? I'm more confident and excited after playing the game because it's true to the original, and I really want to experience everything else they've added to the story and the Mafia universe with this game. And that's been my favorite part of the remake, is learning more about these characters, seeing the story delve just a little deeper. And this is a better version of the original English speaking story, at least. I can only speak for the English version. I know you Czech guys will go crazy if I don't clarify that. And wrapping it up, so just know a lot of gameplay elements have been streamlined with modern gunplay and driving that is, yes, easier than the 2002 version's mechanics. So you'll have to make up your own mind on the gunplay, driving, and the addition of overly action heavy or arcadey sequences. If that's not for you, you always have the original. If you're playing Mafia 1 for the first time, go in expecting what I think is a very good game so far from what I played, with a great narrative, soundtrack, and characters, and I hope you love it and that it has limited bugs in all platforms. That is a big one, let's be real. Now, in terms of pre-order, even though I've had a very positive response to what I played, remain cautiously excited about this game. Don't pre-order any game unless you have 100% confidence that it will meet your expectations. The 10 hours I had with Mafia 1 left me sad that I couldn't continue. The wait will be tougher for me now, and that's the best compliment I can give this game for the time being. And who would have thought that we would get a Mafia 1 remake in the first place? Thankfully, I'm just one of those people that is grateful that this is happening, that it is true to the original, and we get extra layers to this story and the Mafia universe in general. I just pray that it's bug free on all platforms so everyone can enjoy it. Thank you, Hanger13, for even deciding to make this and for giving me early access, most importantly. Nah, I'm joking, but seriously, thank you. Any questions that I didn't answer for you guys, I'll answer it in the comments if I get time, or I'll even do a Q&A if I need to wrap up some other things, but we'll make other videos if need be. This was a long one. I tried to be as in depth without spoiling too much. That is it from me. Mafia 1 releases on September 25th for Xbox One, PS4, and PC. For more Mafia content, subscribe if you want. Later guys, bye-bye.